great Odin's raven.
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
Oh, no, not the beast! Not the beast! Ah!
Hey! Where did you get those clothes? At the toilet store?
And I thought my jokes were bad.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Hello, how are you? It's been a long time, Patrick. It's been a very long time, but we are here. It's just about time. And I feel like we say this almost every show we do now at this point, but it is almost Christmas for sports fans. We've got the NFL season coming up, but before that, starting next week, starting this coming Thursday, we have the beginning of the college football season. And I know you're like me, so you're super pumped about this.
I mean, obviously. The only thing I'm mad about is that I have to work
Ooh.
Thursday night.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Last home game of the year, but at the same time, it's the last game. It's the last day that I'm employed. So that's also a sour spot. Oh, it's not true. I go in Friday.
So if you're out there and you're listening, hire either me or Patrick. We are available to do anything sports-related.
Or anything at this point.
Let us know. But it is college football season, just about. And so we're going to go through, we're going to preview every conference. We're not necessarily going to spend a whole lot of time on everybody, but we are going to make our picks for division winners and then ultimately for your conference champs. We may at the very end talk a little college football playoff. We may not. It's a little far ahead. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how long.
Wait a minute. We're not going to talk in depth about MAC football?
Hey, we might. We'll see.
Why not?
We'll see. Get some action.
Everybody loves some action.
Action. You got to decide. Are you more about that action or are you more about the fun belt? Take your pick. I'm more about the fun belt.
More about the fun belt, but it's all about that action.
Well, look, let's get into it. Let's get right down to business. Let's start off in the ACC. We're going to go ahead and do this kind of alphabetically via conferences this time. So we're going to start with the ACC. We'll go from there. But starting with the ACC, who do you have? Let's start in the Coastal Division because I feel like that one's a little bit easier, a little bit clearer maybe of a pick, at least for me. So let's start there. Who do you have for the Coastal region?
Well, first off, I may need to correct you a little bit because if we're going to go alphabetical, we should have started with the AAC.
True, I just refer to them as the American Conference. Sorry about it. So I go AM instead of ACC. I understand your point. We're starting with the ACC.
We're still starting with the ACC. We're starting with Coastal. We starting with Coastal?
Yeah, start the Coastal.
Well, this is the one of two conferences that I did some in-depth research on at work. Didn't realize it took me a very long time to do that. So I only did the ACC and the SEC, and that was it. But my Coastal pick, honestly, like you said, there's like a 3-4 team race, and the rest are just crapshoots. Like they're not going to win like 4 games. But my pick to win the Coastal Division is going to be North Carolina.
Really?
They've got a lot of guys coming back. Pretty much the entire offense is coming back. They look strong, and I think they got the schedule that fits along with that.
Yeah.
And with that, I mean, if you put 2 and 2 together, I think they've got a good shot of winning.
Well, we'll learn a lot about North Carolina very, very early on.
They played one of the first. Yeah, they played South Carolina on Thursday.
Yeah, starting off with South Carolina, that's going to be, I think, a good measuring stick. We'll find out very quickly. You do look at their strength of schedule. It kind of works out. Once you get past South Carolina, they get North Carolina A&T. Then they get newly coachless, or actually interim coached, Illinois.
Which that's a win, obviously.
And then they've got Delaware before they get to Georgia Tech. And so schedule, I think, lays out for them, you're right, to do some good there. Yeah. I think Duke is another team in that division that could do some damage. We've seen over the last couple of years under David Cutcliffe, they've done really, really well. I actually, though, and I don't think it's much of a question, I'm picking Georgia Tech to win this division. I think they're very, very good. I don't want to say not reloaded in the sense, but they're the type of team that, doesn't necessarily take a whole lot. They've got 13 restarters. They've got 13 stars returning, including quarterback. Anytime you have a quarterback coming back, it does help your offense out. 8 returners on defense. On defense, it was already pretty good. So I'm going to go with Georgia Tech on that side, and then North Carolina and Duke battling it out for kind of second place in that division. Is the Atlantic division easy? Was that an easy decision for you, or is that one a little bit cloudier?
It's not cloudier. I'm not going to say it's cloudier. I mean, outside the Coastal was tougher than the Atlantic.
Okay.
Yeah. But, I mean, it still wasn't easy. I mean, it's kind of like 1A and 1B in the sense that they're both kind of difficult to pick, especially with all of these teams even having first-year quarterbacks or not having much time under their belt. But for the Atlantic, I'm giving it to Florida State again.
Okay.
Just because they do have guys coming back, and even with those guys that didn't start last year, they've got playing time. They've got the experience playing big games. I mean, it's when you kind of look at the Atlantic, half the team's kind of weak. You got Syracuse in there. You got Wake Forest, Boston College, who came off a bad year, and then NC State's kind of one of those fringe teams. Are they going to be good? Are they going to suck? They're kind of one of those. Once you average a 6-6 year all the time. Clemson doesn't really have any pieces coming back, even though they can reload. And then Louisville is also a question mark. So I just kind of give it to Florida State based on experience.
Well, I'm going to completely disagree with you in this sense. I think this one's actually a lot tougher to distinguish who's going to win this one. I think it's a 4-team race. I think it comes down to Clemson, Louisville, Florida State, as you mentioned. I think North Carolina State is a team that's kind of, I'm going to say a second-tier ACC team, but I think they're a team that they return a lot of starters. I want to say, what is it? They return 14, 9 on offense, 5 on defense. Yeah, the defense may be a little bit of a question mark with that few starters returning, but the beginning of their schedule opens up well, and they play against Troy, Eastern Kentucky, Old Dominion, and South Alabama before they get to Louisville. So a lot of time to get that defense working and under the belt. Then they get Louisville, Virginia Tech, open week, Wake Forest, Clemson, Boston College, Florida State, and then they finish off Syracuse and North Carolina. I think this is a team that could turn out to be very good. They're kind of like a team we're going to talk about later in our very last, after we take our last commercial break, a team in the SEC. They could either win the division or they could finish, towards the bottom of the division. I think it's that wide open. I think I'll go ahead and say it. This division kind of reminds me of a very weak version, but a weaker version of the SEC West. And then I think there are several teams that could either. All 4 teams that I mentioned, Clemson, Louisville, North Carolina State, and Florida State, I think they could all go either winning the division or finishing 4th or 5th in the division. Clemson, you said they don't bring back a lot of people. You remember they bring back a guy who's an early Heisman candidate, their quarterback, Watson, who has got some big game experience. Clemson, though, does have that tendency to shrink down in big games. So there's always a question mark there. Florida State looks strong. Their defense is going to be good. Obviously, they have some question marks replacing Jameis Winston, which they've had to do in the past. And Louisville's kind of the same way. There's a lot of question marks on that team. I'm not sure what they're going to be. But I'm going to ultimately say I'm going to take the long shot here and go North Carolina State. So we got an ACC on conference championship game on my side, North Carolina State, Georgia Tech. I'm going to take Georgia Tech in that game. So I'm going to say Georgia Tech wins the ACC. Who do you got in the championship game?
I've got Florida State, North Carolina, and I'm going to pick North Carolina to win the ACC.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. Basically, I mean, Florida State has the experience, even though they don't have the starters. But I'm taking North Carolina based on the fact that they have the experience in games.
Okay.
I mean, they return 10 starters on offense, 7 on defense. They return the most in the ACC, so they've got the most experience as far as the team on the field. And not only that, but their middle of the schedule is pretty easy. They get South Carolina on the neutral side. They do finish the year with 2 games on the road. They play Georgia Tech on the road, Pitt on the road, Virginia Tech, and then play NC State, who we just talked about on the road. But honestly, the schedule looks kind of, like I said, the schedule looks in their favor, plus the returners. I just kind of think with that together, plus having a more chemistry-based team, since they've played so long together, I think it'll go in their favor, and then they'll win the championship.
Fair enough. North Carolina I think is a good team. I like Georgia Tech. I don't know if it's that old school style or something. Which is funny because I normally hate that style, but for some reason I like it with Georgia Tech. And another team I'm going to talk about in this next conference, actually. We're going to move now to the American Conference, with Patrick reminding me, of course, is the AAC, so we should have done them first. But we're going to move to them now. So let's go to the East first. What team do you have coming out of the East and winning that division?
I have Cincinnati coming out of the East.
Okay.
They're really solid. They were tied for first last year. They're one of those teams where it's kind of the same deal, more experience base coming out. Plus, they kind of play in an easier division. They still got Gunnar Kiel on quarterback, who had some really good stats coming out last year. Tommy Tuberville team, who seems to almost put together good ball clubs on the field. Just look at Gunnar Kiel's stats, for example. He threw for over 3,000 yards, 31 touchdowns. He did throw 13 interceptions, but that's okay in a Tuberville style. They're going to throw the ball down your throat. They don't really run it as much. But they have some guys who ran for just over 600 yards apiece, about 18 touchdowns on the run. But, I mean, they have guys coming back on defense, and with an established quarterback, I think that they're going to light up the offense. And here's a fun fact. If we're both around Memphis, they're going to be here playing Memphis, I want to say around October.
September 26th.
September 26th.
Well,
that would be a fun game.
I think you're close to right. I'm going to say it comes down to the final week of the season, actually, or final week of the regular season. And I think what you're going to see is in this conference, you're kind of going to have two straight conference championship games, because I think the team in the East, the team in the West side, I think they're going to play each other. There are two teams over there that I think play each other, and they're going to have a shot at winning the West. And I think there's two teams, and luckily for this conference, they played last week of the regular season. Like I said, I think it's going to come down to Cincinnati and ECU. I like ECU the way they've played the last couple of years. Usually pretty stout on defense. They're really good about playing tough teams early in the season. Now, granted, Florida's not the greatest team in the world anymore. It may not be this season, but they're going to go play at the Swamp second week of the season. They're going to go play, or they got Virginia Tech coming in. They play BYU, who's not as good as they used to be, but still a solid team for the most part. So they've got some the tough end of their schedule is at the beginning, and then close with Cincinnati. I think that's going to determine who wins that division. I'm going to give it to ECU, like I said. I like Cincinnati a lot. As you mentioned, you brought up Gunnar Kiel. I like him as a quarterback, especially in that system. But I think it's going to come down to that game, and I'm going to give the nod to ECU because they're playing at home. It's at ECU, so I'm going to give ECU the nod there. So I'll go ahead and take the West side first. I think this is going to come down to a two-team race as well. And I'm going to kind of cheat here. This is going to be the first time I'm cheating. I'm not totally sure who I'm going to pick, so I'm going to give both teams. I'm not sure who I'm going to say gets the nod in it, but I'm going to say it comes down to Memphis and Navy. That Memphis team is really good. They do play later in the season. They play in November. I like where this Memphis team is headed, which, as an Arkansas State alum, that pains me to say a little bit. But, like I said, I do like where they're headed. I also like Navy. That's a hard style to prepare for week in, week out. And when you get in a conference where your teams are similar athlete-wise, I think that bodes well for them. I'm leaning towards taking Navy for this division based off their experience. Obviously, we know they're an experienced team. They're experienced in big games, experienced in bowl games. I'm going to give them the slight edge over Memphis. So I'm going to say Navy wins the division.
You pick Navy. I'm going to pick the team that you pick to lose to. I got Memphis to win that game, and to win the West Division. And mainly because of a name that is lighting up around the area, and that's Paxton Lynch. Kind of an underrated quarterback coming out of high school. Last year, he threw for over 3,000 yards, threw 22 touchdowns, only 9 picks. Not only that, but he ran for 13. So if you add that together, that's going to be a total of 36 touchdowns. And they got Colum Malone and Moses Frazier, who are also buzzing. They expect them to do big things in the run game. And everyone's saying that the defense just looks nasty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I listen to a lot of Memphis ESPN radio, going home and going to work, and Chris Vernon show, and those guys. They just rave about that Memphis defense. They lost some guys in the draft, but they think they're going to be able to reload and have similar production. And there's a lot of buzz coming off of them. I think they're going to be feeding off the Memphis fans. That's right, there are Memphis fans that go to football games.
Yeah.
They're selling out. I'm telling you, they're selling out.
Yeah, we'll see how that how that actually shows up. I've been to a couple games at Memphis.
You've been to Memphis games when they were terrible.
I've been to Memphis games before they started getting terrible, when they were still fairly decent.
When was that? I don't ever remember.
Like my freshman year.
I think they're almost,
so that's like 6 years ago, but
they're almost out of season tickets and coming out now.
Well, we'll see. I think Memphis is a good choice. Like I said, it's a coin toss between them and Memphis for me, and so I'm. Are you taking them to beat Cincinnati, or are you taking Cincinnati to win?
Taking Cincinnati to win.
Taking Cincinnati. I'm going to go with ECU. I think whoever wins that game, Cincinnati, ECU, is going to win the championship, or is going to win the conference championship. So that's what I'm going with. All right, let's move on fairly quickly to the Big Ten. I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on the East because their schedule is so terribly poor in terms of strength of schedule. Is it Ohio State for you?
Yeah, it's no question.
Yeah, I mean, the only question I have about that, whether they win the conference or not, is what Michigan State does. But I think Michigan State's more likely to lose another game somewhere else. They may be able to beat Ohio State. That's up in the air, but I think it's pretty easy to go with Ohio State on that side. So let's look at the West then. Who do you got in the West?
West, I have Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, okay.
Honestly, I think they have momentum. They just reload. They have the roster to do so. And then just kind of looking at the rest of the teams in the West Division, I didn't see a whole lot. I mean, there's obviously good teams there, but at the same time, I mean, you got Northwestern, you got Minnesota. I don't think Minnesota's going to be able to repeat. They lost some guys. I don't see Nebraska coming back. They don't have the same quarterback. Amir Abdul's gone. That was a big bubbly offense for them. Illinois, like we mentioned earlier, they just lost their coach today.
Yeah.
I don't know why you fire a coach today. I mean, the reasons why make sense, but it's just weird. Next week you start the season and then you fire your coach. Iowa was one of those teams where you used to be scared of like 5-6 years ago.
Not anymore.
You're not scared of Iowa anymore, and then God, you're never scared of Purdue now.
No, ever since Drew Brees. Curtis Painter maybe a little bit. I'm going to take. You went Wisconsin here. I think they're going to have not necessarily a down year, but I think they're going to kind of finish in the 9-3 range, 8-4 that they have been the last couple years. I'm actually taking Minnesota to win this division. They've kind of been my sleeper team the last couple of years.
Minnesota.
For some reason, I like Minnesota a lot. Now, them not having David Cobb anymore, I think will be a bit of a question mark. I have it coming down between them and Nebraska. I think Nebraska's defense is going to be pretty good this year, as they're kind of known for. But I think they're going to be better than they have been the last couple of years. I'm giving a nod to Minnesota, though. And so I've got a Minnesota versus Ohio State. You've got Wisconsin versus Ohio State. Do you have Ohio State losing that game? No, I don't either. It hates me to say that, but Ohio State's probably going to go undefeated and probably going to get into the college football playoff, and we'll see what happens there. So that's that. Let's move on to the Big 12, which is the next conference on the list. Who you got there?
I actually have TCU coming out of there. You can argue that Bader's got a good shot. You can argue that Maybe Oklahoma's got a chance. There may be 2 people in terms of Kansas has a shot.
No, Kansas doesn't even say that.
Kansas doesn't say that. I like how they finished out the year last year. I like Boykin. I like how he plays the quarterback position. That system works tremendously well for him. I think he's going to be able to tear up a lot of defenses. I think he'll be able to score a lot of points. I don't know how their defense is going to be. It may be a fail where they just kind of have to outscore a lot of guys.
Which they can do.
But they can do that.
Yeah.
I've seen them time and time again outscore any team that gets put on the field, and I think they're going to be able to do that this year.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I'm going TCU as well. I think it's a 3-team race, very similar to what you mentioned. I think it's going to be Oklahoma, Baylor, and TCU. Now, the interesting thing about this is that TCU finishes the season with at Oklahoma and then playing Baylor, and then they have a bye week. So we'll see how that goes. That's going to be an interesting part of the season, an interesting thing. And really, what's good about this for this conference is Oklahoma plays Baylor, plays at Baylor, then TCU, then Oklahoma State. Like I just said, you get TCU playing at Oklahoma, at Baylor to finish out the season. And Baylor, obviously, in that case, closes out with Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, TCU, and Texas. So I think, they've essentially, and I don't know if they did this on purpose, but it looks like the Big 12 has backloaded the season for the teams that will have a shot possibly to be in the college football playoff. They backloaded it with the teams who they think have the best chance to win the conference. And so you've got all those games where they're ending the season playing the best teams. So it's either going to be a case of they all play themselves out of the playoff, or one of those teams comes through and gets a spot. And I think it's TCU, and I think TCU is going to be possibly in the college football playoff this year. We'll see how all the other conferences have it. But I've got TCU winning this conference as well. Probably Oklahoma, I'm going to take a second, with Baylor finishing up third.
Yeah.
I just have a feeling that's how it's going to fall. But that's what I'm going with. So that's our first 4 conferences. We're going to take a quick break and come back and talk the rest of them. So we'll be right back. All right, guys, we're back, and now it's time to move on to this is actually a section where we cover mostly the Little 6 conferences. We'll get the Pac-12 in as well in this one before we take our next break. But let's start off where we left off alphabetically with Conference USA. Let's go ahead and start in the East like we've been doing for the most part. Patrick, who do you got here in the East on this one?
I feel like kind of a no-brainer for me. I got Middle Tennessee coming out in the East. A lot of teams in this division are kind of weak. You get Charlotte, who just got in. You get the Florida schools, who were just awful last year. Old Dominion's a new team. Marshall is a solid team. They won the division last year, but they lost their quarterback. He graduated. So I have some question marks with them as far as quarterback play. And then you get WKU, who one I hate. Being an Arkansas State fan, I don't care where they go, I hate them. 2, they really didn't do that great last year either. And so Middle Tennessee comes in with the most momentum. And I believe they can transfer that to this season and honestly play well enough to win the East, which they don't play that well. But.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think Middle Tennessee is a very, very strong team. I think it's a 2-horse race between Middle Tennessee and Marshall. You brought up a good point, and it is something that's going to, I think, obviously determine how this conference goes. I'm going to go ahead and give the nod to Marshall. Yeah. I think it's very much a 1A, 1B sort of situation in this case. I think Marshall's system lends itself to putting a new quarterback in. Now, they do return some of the least amount of starters in the conference. Only Rice and Texas San Antonio bring less back. Middle Tennessee's got 13 returners, 6 on offense, including their quarterback, and 4 on the offensive line, which is a big, big deal in a conference like this, and especially in an offense where you're going to throw the ball around a lot. So I like Middle Tennessee State a lot. I'm giving it to Marshall, and really it's just more of a gut feeling thing. Like I said, it's a 1A, 1B sort of situation there for me. So I've got Marshall. Let's move over to the West. Who do you have in the West?
Once again, it's kind of one of those things where it's not that much competition. I got Louisiana Tech coming out in this one, and I just really like the running back Dixon.
Yeah.
I think he's so good and he's underrated. I saw a stat, or I kind of saw a board where preseason ranking, he's like the 5th guy. If a lot of these juniors were to come out and go to the draft, he would be the 5th running back drafted.
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana Tech has a lot of momentum. Isn't Jeff Driscoll their quarterback?
I want to say that's right.
Former Florida?
I may have to. I'll see if I can pull it up real quick. I know. To go along with that, yes, he is.
Is he going to be able to play this year with the Bulldogs?
I honestly don't know. I think he
will.
may.
I think he will.
Oh yeah. Hang on. I think I just saw it. Sorry about this, guys. This is a little. Yeah, he's been named the starter as of July 22nd.
Well, let's be honest. Even though Driscoll wasn't great at Florida, if you have someone who's going to start at Florida, I think he's more than capable of playing at Tech.
Yeah, I think
he gets Tech, but
I think he's one of those 5th-year senior in graduate school transfers. That's why he's getting started. I'm like you. I don't think there's much competition in the West. I've got Louisiana Tech winning it for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. I like Dixon. Driscoll's a guy who I think at that skill level you're going to be able to plug him in and he'll be okay. And as a guy who kind of grew up a Florida Gator fan for the most part and is still has not a vested interest but has an interest in how the Gators do, I think Jeff Driscoll gets a lot of, negative publicity maybe is the wrong way to say it, but I think a lot of the struggles of that offense have been put on him the last couple of years. And I don't think that's 100% warranted. So I think he'll be okay in that situation. I think it's a good situation for him to revitalize his career, so to speak, which sounds terrible to have to say.
Quick question.
But I do have Louisiana Tech winning that division.
When Driscoll was at Florida,
yes.
Did you like, it's okay, he's kind of getting a bad rap, or did you like, that I hate him? I think he's terrible.
I thought a lot of it was a bad rap. That offensive line was terrible.
The line sucked. And he was
the skill positions for a Florida Gator team haven't been good the last couple of years.
That's very fair.
And so
defense was more of their stronger point.
Yeah, he's one of those that it's hard. It's been hard to tell if it was him or if it was the offense around him. So I'm going to be interested kind of to see how that goes. Who do you have winning the championship?
Give it to Tech. Why not?
Give it Tech. I actually am going Tech as well. I think they're just a stronger team overall, and I think they're going to win that conference. So we'll move on real quick and talk about the individuals, or not the individuals, the independents. You might as well call them the individuals because the only one worth note in the independents this year is probably going to be Notre Dame, right?
Yeah,
they're going to be the best team out of the independents. BYU, I don't think is going to be nearly as strong, and Army's the only other one that's an independent this year anymore. Yeah. And we know, as sad as it is to say, I love Army. I love, especially their new rebrand. If you haven't seen the new rebrand of the Army brand, I'm not. Really, really good. I think they're going to do really well with that. I just think Notre Dame's the only. Now, granted, they've got a tough schedule. They got Texas, Virginia, Georgia Tech, UMass is pretty much their only easy game. Well, Temple. At Clemson, Navy, USC, at Pitt, Wake Forest, Boston College, Stanford. So maybe not as tough of a schedule as they usually have, but still a fairly tough schedule. I think they're going to be okay. They're probably going to go 10-2, somewhere in that sort of range, maybe 9-3. We don't have to spend a whole lot of time on that. That's your Notre Dame team. That's about what they're going to do, right?
By the way, I'm looking at these Army uniforms. Nasty.
The new logo is the sick thing, I think. It's pretty cool.
I like it a lot.
So that's the independents. Notre Dame's your team to watch there.
I didn't even make any notes.
Yeah,
there's nothing on for independents. I was just like Notre Dame. That's it.
Yeah, not much point. So let's move on. Let's get some action in real quick.
Action.
Let's go with the East first. Who you got coming out of the East?
I got Bowling Green coming out of the East.
Okay.
I think they got a lot of momentum. They got a lot of stars coming back. I like their offense a lot. Honestly, I think it's a fun one to watch. If you never watched a Bowling Green game, not a shot. Their schedule's kind of tough. They start off playing Tennessee and Nashville, which is a top 25 team. They go at Maryland, play Memphis. Then they kind of gets easy to play Purdue, which the experts will call that an upset. Then they'll play Buffalo. They'll play at Kent State.
That's going to be the tough one.
Kent State.
I think that's the toughest game on schedule.
You think so?
Well, in conference. I think that's the toughest game on schedule.
I don't know. I mean, they play home versus Ohio.
Ohio's a bit of a wild card, I think, yeah.
See, Kent State really they did nothing last year.
Yeah, but they got 16 guys coming back.
They did have 16.
4 on the offensive line. They got the quarterback. They got the running back. A couple receivers tight end. I also in this division am picking Bowling Green. 10 returning starters on offense, including your quarterback, and all 5 offensive line.
Yeah,
and a team that's predicated on their offense and has an interesting offense and a really a fun offense to watch. Having that many starters come back is a big deal. Like you said, I think their schedule once they get past their non-conference games, essentially weakens a lot, and they're going to be a fun team to watch. So we both got Bowling Green coming out of that. I think Kent State and Ohio are going to play for the number 2 spot there, and I think Kent State might be a little bit better than Ohio. We'll see. So let's move on to the West. What do you have coming out of the West?
Well, if you pay attention to the MAC in the last, 30 years.
Well, not quite that far. I know who you're talking about, but last about 15 years.
At least 15. You've seen Northern Illinois coming out of this division. I see it coming out again. They've got, let's go through the schedule, UNLV, Murray State.
Who, by the way, let me just stop you real quick. UNLV, since I'm not picking them to win their conference, so we really won't talk about them later, has a new field that looks like a craps table.
It's awesome.
It looks ridiculous.
It looks sick.
Anyways, back to Northern Illinois.
They're trying to, hey, if you're UNLV, you got to do whatever you can.
Play out the Vegas. They got the welcome to Vegas
yes.
Sticker on the back of their helmet now. I like the particular one that I'm looking at. Shows that they're playing UNLV, but Toledo is the helmet.
That's weird.
So that's interesting. No, I'm also picking Northern Illinois on this side. Like you, I think their schedule plays out really well.
Their schedule is kind of easy.
Yeah, and really their non-conference schedule outside of Ohio State isn't exactly a struggle.
No.
So I'm going to pick Northern Illinois coming out of this. I don't think there's Central Michigan maybe might give a little bit of a run. Western Michigan possibly. Eastern Michigan has some decent-looking uniforms this year, but I don't think they're going to threaten much. So I think it's a Northern Illinois horse race to win that division, and it's probably not going to be close. They'll probably win that division pretty easy. So then, who do you have coming out of the division? I've got Northern Illinois versus Bowling Green.
I do as well. I got Northern Illinois versus Bowling Green. I've got Northern Illinois to win the MAC. What a surprise.
Yeah, I'm going Northern Illinois here as well. I just think they're too good of a team, and they've been there before. They're not a team that's super worried about playing in big games. They'll get that test against Ohio State early. I think they're the strong team. They're the team to beat in that conference. So let's go ahead and move on. We'll get the Mountain West here. Let's start in the East. Who you got coming out of the East?
You mean Mountain West?
Mountain West. I'm sorry. What is it? The Mountain, or it's the West Division, which is confusing because you got the West and the Mountain Division.
I know, it confused me. I thought it was cool because I was like, man, that's kind of weird at the same time. Coming out of the West, I've got San Diego State coming out. I know Fresno, which was the team last year, but San Diego, they've got a lot of guys coming back in. They've got the schedule to fit it. I think Fresno's going to slack off a bit this year. It's going to be, I think Fresno's going to slack a little bit, but it's still going to be that 2-horse race between them and San Diego State. But I do think that they come out on top. I think it kind of helps that they don't play each other this year. Oh, actually, I take that back. They do.
Yeah, they play early in the season.
They do. Yeah, San Diego, they get that game at home, so that's going to help them out. They do kind of have a tough non-conference. They play at Cal and then at Penn State.
Those are money games.
Oh, they're absolutely money games.
That's all that is.
Absolutely. But I think that game on the 3rd of October is going to decide it all.
Yeah, I've got San Diego State winning as well. It turns out, apparently, we don't have too many different opinions on this year so far. now that we're getting into it. I've got San Diego State as well. They also have some really new sweet uniforms with the Aztec calendar uniforms. I like them. I think they're going to be a good team this year. Again, like you said, the schedule kind of plays out. The West Division isn't exactly the strongest division in football. We could see, again, I think it's 2 hours, like you said, between Fresno and San Diego State. As much I would love to see Hawaii finally come back and start making noise again.
I really would.
But I don't think this is the year that's going to happen. Their schedule is way tough anyways. So I think it's going to be San Diego State. And here's what's kind of interesting about this is neither San Diego State or Fresno State have to play the team that I'm picking to win the Mountain Conference. I'm probably going to assume that you're picking to win the Mountain Division. That's Boise State.
Yeah, most surprised.
Yeah, hard to pick against Boise State,
Really
especially in that division. That's another division that really outside of Boise State's kind of weak. Colorado State could be decent, but they're replacing their head coach, so you got that to deal with. So they're probably going to drop off a little bit. I think it's Boise State's division to lose, and then I think it's Boise State's conference to lose. I think they're going to win the conference championship. I've got Boise winning.
I've got Boise as well, so we do not differ one bit.
Yeah, hard to pick against Boise for sure. They have the history. Hard to pick against them. So we're going to talk about one more conference, then we'll take a break. After that one of the big conferences. I'm going to maybe blaspheme a little bit here. This may be my favorite conference to watch now.
Well, I mean, I can understand why you like it.
Because
It's not blasphemy in a sense. It's fast-paced offense.
Exactly, and that's most of the reason. We're obviously talking about the Pac-12. Let's start in the North Division. Patrick, who you got winning the North?
I want to pick one team really, really bad, but I want to go with the easy pick. I'm going to pick Oregon to come out of the North. I kind of want to pick Stanford, but at the same time, it's too risky for me. So I want to go chalk. I'm going to pick Oregon for this one.
Yeah, I'm picking Oregon as well. Obviously, I love that offense, and it's a lot of fun to watch. They're replacing, obviously, a Heisman Trophy winner, Marcus Mariota, but they're replacing him with a kid who's transferring from, oddly enough, the team that they're opening the season against, Eastern Washington, in Vernon Adams. They've officially named him the starter. This is a kid who, I'll just give you the stats, in 3 years at Eastern Washington, he's got almost 10,500 yards passing, 110 touchdowns, 31 interceptions. That's pretty decent. I'm going to give it to him. I think he's going to be good in that offense. Obviously, it's very similar to what Eastern Washington runs anyways. I'm giving the nod to Oregon. There's something about that Stanford team that I just can't. This year, I don't think they have it.
Yeah.
There's something about it there. So I'm giving it. I'm going to go with Oregon here, and we'll see what interesting jerseys they come out with this year. So let's move down to the South. And who you got there?
I've actually got USC coming out on top. Arizona was your winner last year. Then they lost some key pieces. They're still going to be. It's going to be a two-man race. UCLA was high up last year, but I think they've got a lot of distractions coming out. With these high-profile kids and their parents kind of making a scene or leaving camp early, quitting football and things like that. It's just too many distractions going into the year, not really being able to focus strictly on football. Plus their schedule kind of hurts them a bit as well. It's a two-man race. I can see where Arizona would come out, especially with the Sarkisian incident that just happened with USC. Or Arizona's just been just going business as usual, going to prepare for the year. Now UCLA and USC, they play the final game as usual at USC this year. But I think they have the kids to go out and win that division. Now, we'll say this. I think Oregon's going to win overall. They're going to win the conference. I'm sure you probably have the same. but I do have USC Oregon championship game with Oregon winning.
I actually have struggled to pick the South a little bit.
It's a tough one.
It's a good. I think it's a good little comp or division.
It'll be fun to watch.
And I think it's a 3-team race. I think it's between USC, Arizona, and Arizona State.
Yeah. Arizona State's one I didn't mention.
Arizona State's a bit of a question mark. They've got a tough schedule. Really, they open with Texas A&M. That'll be an interesting game. They're wearing those sweet desert ice uniforms. Anytime I can mention good uniforms, I'm going to mention good uniforms. If you haven't figured that out, obviously Arizona returns a new Solomon, who I think is a really, really good quarterback. USC obviously is USC, and I don't think the Sarkisian incident will be as big of a deal. We will get to see firsthand, or not firsthand because we won't be there, but we'll be watching on TV for sure. We'll get to see their first game of the season. They open against Arkansas State. That'll give us a little bit of a barometer of how to measure them. USC is just one of those teams that I'm not sure how to measure them right now, and so that's why I kind of struggle to choose between the two. I think I'm going to give the nod in the South to USC, but I'm not 100% sure. I think there's going to be some weird, funky tiebreakers in the South, and we'll have to see how that plays out. Because I could very easily see Arizona State, USC, and Arizona playing themselves into a 3-way tie for first in the conference. So we'll see how that goes. I don't think it's going to matter though. I think Oregon's going to win the conference championship. I love Oregon. I'll admit it. I love Oregon. I love their offense. I love the speed they play with. I love Oregon, but I do think they're the better team probably, and they play in the weaker division, and so they're going to come into that championship game with a little bit, maybe a little bit more of a break. So that's that. We've gone through everything except the SEC and the Sun Belt. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk about what's probably our two home conferences, so to speak. So we'll be right back after this. And we're back. Patrick, it's now time to move on to our hometown conferences, so to speak. The only conference the teams from our state play in. And so let's move on. Let's get cracking. Time to start in the SEC, the best conference in football.
Absolutely. No comparison.
Well, Pac-12's starting to catch up a little bit. They're getting close.
What did you say about the SEC just like 5 seconds ago?
I said they're the best conference in the country.
All right, now let's go in.
It's not a question. It's starting to be a little bit of a question. I think the validity over how good the Pac-12 is. I think it's hard to look at people in the South and say, oh, obviously FCC. I think we've got to start admitting the Pac-12's catching up. They're not there yet. I'm not saying they're there yet. They're catching up.
I know that.
Okay. Anyways, let's get into the SEC. That we'll save for a different show on another day. So if you want to hear us argue about that, come back later. Listen to another show. Let's start in the East. Patrick, who you got coming out of the East?
Let me just say, first of all, let me tell you this. Tennessee is going to look good this year. I got some inside scoops on the Volunteers.
Yeah?
I think they're going to look good.
Talking about jerseys?
No, I mean,
They do have the new Nike jerseys, though, don't they? Aren't they Nike now?
They do, but I was talking about just the guys who are inside those jerseys.
Oh.
As if you didn't know what I was talking about.
I did. Anyways, who you got coming out of the East?
I got Georgia coming out of the East.
Okay.
Mainly because of Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be it's going to be like a 1A-1B as far as best player in the league between him and Leonard Fournette for LSU. We'll probably mention this in a few seconds. I mean, let's look at the East. Florida, they've got 4 starters coming back on offense. New coach, new system. Going to struggle. Kentucky played better last year, but it's just kind of a sense of, can they keep improving? Are they going to beat Kentucky again? I hate Matty Mock in Missouri. Missouri's played well. Can that defense continue? And can Matty Mock actually play well? He keeps He plays well enough to keep them in games, and their defense pretty much wins those games for them. Vanderbilt, no, I'm not even talking about Vanderbilt.
They got sweet new uniforms, though.
Yeah, but they're Vanderbilt. South Carolina, they finished strong last year. They were terrible starting off. Can they build off of what they did towards the end of last season and in the bowl game and be the South Carolina that we're used to as being a threat in every single game? I think Georgia is just well-rounded. They're returning a lot of guys this year. We don't know who's playing quarterback. We've never seen this kid, whoever it is. I don't know who it is. I don't know if they didn't trade or not. But I think Georgia has a lot of momentum going in. Georgia's always a scary team. They've got the defense. They've got the weapons on offense. They've got Nick Chubb. They can run all over these guys. Pretty much stepping right into where Todd Gurley left. And I think it's going to be sort of an easy pick for the East as far as I'm concerned.
Let me ask you a question, and then I'll tell you who my choice is. If South Carolina doesn't win the division this year, do you think they fire Steve Spurrier? Is he on the hot seat, or is he just is he unfireable at this point?
He's not unfireable. If he wouldn't have done all these rampages and media day and stuff, then I would say he's probably unfireable. But he just kind of made himself look like an idiot and kind of embarrassed himself in media days. And while he may be old, but he can still coach and this, and that, and the other. And no one, he brought it up on his own. No one even said, no one was questioning, except maybe, I think it was a local guy in South Carolina was questioning, if he's still able to coach. No one else ever mentioned it in national media or anything. And he's like, well, let me start off this. I'm not too old. I can coach.
That doesn't sound like the old ball coach.
It doesn't. But I'm not going to attempt an old... I can do a little bit of an old ball coach, but I'm not going to attempt it right now. Some of the guys from the Dan Patrick area were really good.
Well,
Coach. But I think he put it on his own to where it's like, if you want to fire me, come and fire me if I'm not good. And they're like, well, take your word for it.
I think he's getting to the point where he's got to either do something big here this year or they might start looking somewhere else. I think, I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think it's an easy choice. I think it's a two-horse race between Georgia and Tennessee. You mentioned Georgia brings back a lot of people. Yeah, they bring back 12 guys, 12 stars, 7 on offense, 5 on defense. Tennessee brings back 18 of their 22 starters. For a team that got a lot better towards the end of the year, 10 on offense, including your quarterback, including 4 receivers and tight ends, including 4 offensive linemen. They bring back 8 guys on defense, and that includes a kicker, of course, but they bring back 8 guys on defense. I think Tennessee, I'm giving them the nod. I love Mark Richt. I think he's a great guy, but I think his teams have a tendency to not finish and not be as good as they should be. And so I think they're probably the best team, but I don't think they're the team that's going to win the division. I think Tennessee's going to win the division, and I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia loses 2 games at conference.
Where are you getting these returning starter numbers from?
This place that I'm getting returning starters from.
What's the site?
Phil Still.
Well, I looked in the...
Which is kind of a big deal.
I looked in the SEC Media Guide. It was also a big deal. They have 7 coming back from offense and 6 on defense, which means they have 13.
Well, who are you talking about, Georgia or
Tennessee?
Tennessee. That kind of depends on probably how they determine what a... Because, some places, the way to do it, this is a little pullback. Some places will do it, if a guy starts a game, period, at any point in time in the season, and some will do it if they start, half the games. So this, and I'm not sure because I'm not looking at, I don't have exactly where it is on this one, but this one may be one where it was hey, if they started a game or 2 games or something, not just 1 game. That may be, I don't know. I'm going with 18 because I know they started 18 freshmen last year.
Yeah. Whenever you said 18, I was like, wait a minute.
So since they started
7 and 6 doesn't add up to 18.
Since they started 18 freshmen last year, I'm going to go with the 18 number and assume I'm right. So that's the East. Let's move to the West, where I'm just going to say it's a lot more wide open.
Honestly.
Who do you got in the West?
I didn't want to pick this one. It's so freaking tough. I will say this. I want to go ahead and just knock off who I don't think will win. I don't think Mississippi State's going to win.
Okay.
just because they've got probably the best quarterback coming into the SEC this year. And he's not great, but he's got the most experience. And with an SEC, especially an SEC West full of brand new quarterbacks, and then you've got Brandon Allen in Arkansas, I think he's going to be the best one out of those. But at the same time, other than him, there's 3 other returners on offense, and there's not that many on defense for them. So I'm going to knock them out. There's not a lot of returns on offense for Alabama. Now, Alabama, yeah, they can reload all they want. But I think they're going to struggle a little bit, especially early with the offense. They'll get cupcakes to play early on, but I think they'll still struggle. LSU, they're not going to win mainly because they don't have a quarterback. And I say they don't. It's not their starters bad. It's the guys on their roster that are bad. Like the 2 guys who are fighting for the starting spot aren't good.
Yeah, there's no quarterback on that roster.
They're just bad.
Yeah, they're awful.
And so they're not going to win. I don't think Arkansas is going to win. I don't trust the defense. They lost a lot of guys last year. Now they've got some guys who are playing well in practice, and they played well last year. But I just don't trust the defense this year. And I think they lost a little bit of spark with Jonathan Williams being out for the year. Now,
I don't think that hurts you as much as you think.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish.
Quickly.
I do think that Villamont has the capability of producing running backs, and I think he can put a guy in, and they're not going to put the same numbers as Williams, but they're going to be able to produce just like a Jonathan Williams, and so the running game isn't as bad as people might think. I think they're still going to be really good. They still got Alex Collins, and whoever's going to step up, he's going to do really well as well, just because of the offense that Villamont puts in this system.
Yeah, I don't think that injury matters at all. Because this is why. Because we've talked about it in past shows about especially when Bielema was at Wisconsin. His system, you have system running backs. We've talked about this multiple times, I feel like. You have system running backs. That's why Melvin Gordon didn't win the Heisman. That's why Monty Ball didn't win the Heisman. Why all these guys didn't win the Heisman but were really, really good running backs in college is because his offense is designed for running backs to succeed. It doesn't matter what running back is there. They're going to be good. That offensive line is going to be good. I don't think that injury matters at all.
I do because, one, it's not going to matter as much, but one, Williams is a senior, and the guy who's stepping up is a freshman.
Alex Collins is not a freshman.
I'm not saying Alex Collins is a freshman. I'm saying the guy who's going to replace Williams.
I'm not worried about it. I don't think that's an issue.
I don't think he knows the offense as well as Williams does.
That's not an offense that takes a lot of time to learn. And running back, like in the NFL, is one of the easier positions to transition. Because all you do in Bielema is you run to the hole.
I know.
Run to the hole and run behind these big 6'10" offensive linemen that are opening gaping holes. I don't think that injury matters.
I'm not saying it matters a lot. I say it matters probably 5, maybe on a scale of 1 to 100, 5.
Okay, then it doesn't matter at all.
I'm not saying we'll never say 0, but I won't go past like 10.
That doesn't matter at all. Anyways, continue. Who do you got winning that division? You're gonna.
To me, it's a 3-man race.
I think you pretty much backed yourself into an Ole Miss corner.
I don't want to say Ole Miss. I want to say Auburn.
Auburn, really?
I want to say Auburn. It's going to be a race between A&M and Ole Miss and Auburn, but I'm going to say Auburn. I think the defense is going to improve tremendously this year. And I like the offense this year. To me, it's how far can the quarterback take them? And he played against Arkansas, and he played really well against them. And he's played in other games where he did really well. And the other 2 teams, like Ole Miss, we don't know how good this quarterback's going to be. Texas A&M, we we saw bits and pieces about their quarterback, but overall, I just think Auburn's the more well put together team. I think they'll win the West.
I will tell you right now who is not winning the West. LSU's not winning the West.
Correct.
Auburn's not winning the West.
Okay.
I think those two. I'm going to say those two are the only teams that I don't think will win at all. I think Auburn's looking at more like a 6-6 sort of season. I don't think. Look, their defense under Gus Malzahn has never been that good. They've technically returned 12 starters from the list I'm looking at. So this is maybe different than yours. 4 on offense, not including a quarterback or a running back. You got 3 on the offensive line. Okay. You got 8 returning on defense, but that's technically including a kicker and a punter. So you got 3 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, 3 defensive backs. I don't think that defense is going to be as good as maybe what some people are thinking. I don't trust that team. I don't like what they looked like at the end throughout the season or a lot of parts last year. I don't think they're going to be that strong this year. So let's see. So that takes LSU. Again, we discussed lack of quarterback, and Les Miles is a crazy person, so who knows what's going to happen there. But I don't think those two teams are going to be in playing for a championship. Alabama, I'll go ahead and say this. I picked Alabama to win strictly because I don't really know who's going to win, and so I'm not betting against Nick Saban. Yes, I understand that they have loads and loads of questions at quarterback because we have no idea who's going to play quarterback there. But you know what? They were in a similar situation last year, and Blake Sims turned out pretty good. And while I don't know, it's iffy because I don't know how good they're going to be, but I don't know how bad they're going to be. I don't think they're going to be bad. That defense is going to be fine. The offense in everywhere except maybe the quarterback is probably going to be fine. I'm not super worried about that. Mississippi State, big question marks with that team on defense. Offensively, I think they'll be okay, but they struggled at times last year. And when Dak isn't 100%, there's question marks there. So I don't feel comfortable picking them. You mentioned Mississippi, Ole Miss. They're going to, like you said, I think they're going to go as far as their quarterback. I don't know anything about him really, so I don't know how good they're going to be, how bad they're going to be. But I do know that Hugh Freeze is really, really good at quarterbacks, so that bodes well for them. Bo Wallace was at times a very good quarterback when he wasn't Bo Wallacing, and so I'll give Hugh Freeze the benefit of the doubt. I just don't know. They've got to go play at Alabama. They play at Auburn. Those could be tough games. They do have probably the easier schedule. They get Texas A&M at home and they get Arkansas at home, so that helps them out a little bit. And they do get Alabama very early in the season, so that could get that out. Texas A&M, I don't trust them at all. I don't trust their defense at all. I trust their defense less than I trust Auburn's defense, probably. I trust their defense less than I trust Mississippi State's defense, probably. I just do not trust that defense at all. And really, I think there's probably a lot of question marks still on offense. I don't know how their quarterback play is going to be this year. That seems to have been a question mark last year, at least at times. So I don't know where to go with that. So what? That leaves Arkansas as the only other team. Arkansas, I'll say this about them. I think their defense will be fine. I think, yes, they lose Phylon. Yes, they lose Trey Flowers. Those are big losses.
Don't forget Marshall Spate.
And Marshall Spate, thank you. I was trying to think of who it was at linebacker that they were losing, or that they lost. You know what, though? As good as they got last year from the year before, I think I'm going to give this coaching staff the benefit of the doubt. They can get this defense ready enough that they can be good. And let's not remember, their schedule plays out decently to start off with. They get UTEP, they get Toledo, they get Texas Tech. I think those 3 are very winnable games, obviously. Then it gets tough. They play Texas A&M. They play at Tennessee. They play at Alabama. They get a bye week. Then they play Auburn at home. Then they go UT Martin. That'll be an easy win. Then they get at Ole Miss, at LSU in a game that still ticks me off because it's no longer on the day after Thanksgiving.
Don't even get me started.
And then they get Mississippi State at home and they get Missouri at home. They do have probably the toughest schedule in the conference. They're a team that I think will either win the division, they will lose 3 or 4 games, or they'll finish towards the bottom of the division. I don't think there's not a lot of in between.
There's so many options.
They could go either way. I think a lot of it hinges on Brandon Allen and how much he's improved over last year. And he improved a lot last year, between the year before and last year.
Yeah.
Coming into this, he is the quarterback in the SEC with the most experience. He started the most games of any quarterback in the SEC. That counts for something in the SEC. I think we saw a lot last year that him not being asked to do as much offensively helped him out a ton. I think he's going to be okay. I think he's going to do good. It's really just a matter of how tough their schedule is and how well that defense plays. So I'm giving the nod to Alabama based on past experience, based on trusting Nick Saban, that used car salesman, as much as anybody. So I'm giving it to Alabama. So I've got Alabama against Georgia. We should probably pick who's going to win the championship here. Actually, I got Alabama versus Tennessee. You got?
I have Georgia versus Auburn, and I have Georgia winning the SEC.
You got Georgia winning. I'm going to go Bama again, just on. It's a coin toss at that point in time. If Bama's good enough to get there, I think Bama probably wins. If not, and it's Arkansas. If Arkansas gets there or any other team, I'd be tempted to give it to Tennessee. But I'm going to go with Bama winning the conference. So real quick, because we're running out of time very, very quickly, let's go into the Sun Belt. Patrick, who do you got coming out of the Sun Belt? Who do you got winning the Sun Belt this season? Sun Belt, Fun Belt.
Sun Belt, Fun Belt. Well, their first year in the league, they got pretty freaking lucky, and they didn't have to play Lafayette or Arkansas State. This year they have to play one of those. They have to play Arkansas State at Jonesboro on Halloween. And guess what? They play Lafayette the very next week, but they play them at home. But I think I'm still going to give the edge to Georgia Southern. I think that, well, I do apologize. A bit of a mishap.
You're wrong. They don't play Arkansas this year.
I know. You don't know why? Because I clicked on Georgia State's instead of Georgia Southern.
Yes.
I
was questioning that for a second. I was like, wait.
I was like, wait, this schedule looks a lot.
This
schedule looks a lot tougher.
I was like, wait a second, Patrick. I specifically wrote down that ASU and Georgia Southern don't play. That's what
makes sense.
You're good. I was like, what?
Let's run through their schedule though. They do play at West Virginia. Then they play Western Michigan, Citadel, at Idaho, at ULM, New Mexico State, Appalachian State, Texas State, at Troy, at Georgia. Of course, they'll lose that one. Then they play at home versus South Alabama, and then at home versus Georgia State. I don't see how they're getting such lucky schedules year after back.
Carl Benson.
Carl Benson.
That's the only thing I can think of.
He doesn't even deserve to be managing a rec league, much less the Sun Belt.
Ooh. If he wants to work for you, that will work for you, Benson.
I actually would not work for Benson because he's an idiot. I feel like I would hate that work for him.
Oh, fair enough. I will still work for you, Benson. Don't worry.
But
I'll make you better.
Because of this freaking easy schedule, I have Georgia Southern winning the Sun Belt again.
All right, I've got it being a 3-team race here. I've got it being App State, Georgia Southern, and Arkansas State. I think it's going to come down. Obviously, App State has to play both Georgia Southern and Arkansas State, but they get them at home. They get both of those teams at home. That could be a big deal. Georgia Southern obviously has to go to App State, and Arkansas State, as we mentioned, doesn't play Georgia Southern, but they do have to go on the road and play App State. Arkansas State gets the benefit of starting off against a very good USC team. App State's going to play a very good Clemson team, not right off the bat, but second week. What we're seeing here, again, other than Georgia Southern who plays Georgia late in the season, is I think it comes down to these teams that play these Sun Belt teams that play really good teams. We'll see how good they play against them. And I think that could determine a lot. It's going to come down to, I hate to say this,
I'm probably going to give the nod to Georgia Southern strictly because they don't have to play Arkansas State. And I think that's a disservice to Arkansas State. I think that's a disservice to Georgia Southern, really. I think it's just a disservice to the Sun Belt that what could be the two best teams or two of the three best teams don't play and haven't played for the second straight year. So I'm going to say the loser in this conference is conference scheduling, that we don't get to see Georgia Southern and Arkansas State play. Because remember, this is a league, this is a conference where we don't have a conference championship game. So this could be an issue where we have some wacky tiebreaker issues again. We could see Georgia Southern beat App State and then Arkansas State lose to App State, or something like that. And we'll see. We'll have to see how that plays out. I am probably going to, as much as it pains me to give the nod, like I said, to Georgia Southern based off of the fact that they don't have to play Arkansas State, which I think would have been a tough game for them. So that's, unfortunately, sadly, my pick to win the conference. But I do think Arkansas State, I do think App State, and I do think Georgia Southern, excuse me, not Georgia State. Georgia State's terrible. Georgia Southern are all probably bowl teams from this conference. So that's good. Now, if we can get Arkansas State to get into a decent conference, we might be okay. Keep an eye out, though, and you kind of mentioned them. Keep an eye out for South Alabama. They've been good the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
They're a team that can cause some havoc, possibly in this conference. They could beat Arkansas State. They could beat Georgia Southern.
As good as they want to be.
Yeah, they could beat App State even. So there's some teams there. I don't think ULM's going to be as good this year. I don't think Lafayette's going to be as good this year.
We watched that ULM offense. We watched the ULM team, and I watched them a couple times after we watched them.
Yeah, I watched them all
Dear
the time.
God, that was the worst offense I've ever seen in my entire life. It frustrated me so
Not a whole lot of good.
badly to watch them.
You look at, and here's what's interesting about it. You look at App State, App State brings back 20 starters. Arkansas State brings back 14. Georgia Southern brings back 12. What'll be interesting to see, and I think very similar to what we kind of said about Arkansas, I think Arkansas State goes as far as Freddie Knighton can take them. I think Freddie Knighton he's a quarterback that, if you've listened to the show, if you know me at all, you know I've had some questions about him and his ability to read a defense. So we'll see. This will be his third year in the offense, or second year in the offense, but third year really playing quarterback at the collegiate level. We'll see how he turns out, see how well he decides to play this year. If he plays really, really well, he's got a chance to be one of the better dual-threat quarterbacks in the nation. Even I'll go so far as to say that because I can't think of any other really, really good dual threats this year. There's not a whole lot of them.
Most of them are your typical pro style.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. I'm willing to say he's going to be better this year than he was last year. But hey, look, that's going to be the show. We got to get this out so you guys can start listening to it. Tweet at us. I know it's been a long, long time. Tweet at me at Matt_Sindelar. Tweet at Patrick at Patrick_Howie. Tweet at the show at MIATC show. And also, Patrick's pointing at me, so I know he wants to say something.
What's on tap for next week? I know, obviously, college football starts next week, but
next week we're probably going to start getting into the NFL. We'll just have to see. It's getting to be that time when we start talking the NFL.
We'll probably do an AFC or NFC preview, and then the next week, which will be when NFL starts, we'll do the latter of the two.
Yeah, something like that. So be on the lookout for that. That's not too far down the line. With that, Patrick, say goodbye because we're out of here.
See you next week.
All right, see you dudes.
No, run! My tummy's rumbling. It's scary. Tommy's got the tum rums. Now in America it's bling bling, but out here it's bling bang, huh?
I already took what I call a Dwyer shower. I rub my armpits with air fresheners. New car.
Oh yeah, I'm experimenting with some new entrepreneurial ideas. That one's called Sport for Thirds. Dress loud.